Many Jews today feel the need for a Jewish renaissance. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift, not only physically but spiritually, out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Jews are accustomed to recline during Passover on the Seder night. Is this a requirement?
To recline or not to recline, that is the question. The fact of the matter is that most Jews are told that they must recline. That is usually the verb, the English verb that is used on Leil HaSeder when eating the matzah or drinking the wine. And most Jews believe that they are in fact reclining, but I can tell you categorically that almost no Jew today on the planet actually performs the mitzvah of hasebah. And that is because the mitzvah of hasebah is something that simply no longer exists nowadays. In order to explain this, we have to first describe what hasebah actually was. We know from many ancient sources, both written historical records and pictorial depictions of how ancient Greeks and ancient Romans used to eat at their banquets, particularly the elite, the rich and the powerful. And of course it goes without saying that the common man also, when he could, when he was able to, he also tried to emulate them. Ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, and very possibly also ancient Persians, by the way, because we see the beginning of Recline-That that there was a great banquet, and it speaks there of mitoth, zahav, v'chesef, speaking about what many people would translate incorrectly as beds, but in fact we're referring to special couches, as we're about to explain. So all these different nations from the ancient Mediterranean and Middle East used to eat during important meals, and the rich and the powerful, probably all their meals were eaten in such a fashion, whilst reclining on specially designed couches, which were not flat like a bed, but were raised on one side. In other words, they were flat for the most part, and they went up at one end in such a fashion, and the person would recline on his side on this specially designed couch, which was raised on the left. They would lean. The left side of the body would be on that raised section, and in such a manner they ate and drank at their meals. Certainly at banquets, perhaps not at a quick breakfast, but at any important meal. That is how they would do things. And certainly important and rich, powerful people would only eat an important meal and entertain guests in such a manner. There is no question this is what Hazal had in mind when they spoke about hasebah, and they wanted that every Jew to behave as important, rich, powerful people did in Greco-Roman society behaved. They wanted every Jew to feel that I am a very important person, particularly on this night. And therefore the Mishnah speaks about even a poor person, afilu ani, who is not normally someone who had the wherewithal or the inclination perhaps also to recline, lahasev, to eat a meal in such a fashion. He didn't have the right kind of furniture, he didn't have the kind of couches, etc. But on this night he was told he must try and do so. How could a poor person, for example, do this? He didn't have the couch, he probably couldn't find one, he couldn't buy one, but he could by sitting on the floor, which, by the way, keep in mind, this is how people in general used to sit. They did not have chairs as we have chairs. They did not have other kinds of seating furniture that we have. They used to sit on the floor on cushions, on mats or on cushions, and you could recline, lahasev, that is, for a meal, emulating the fashion of the Greeks and the Romans, etc. You could arrange this on the floor by placing cushions in such a manner that you were lying down half lying down, semi-reclining on some cushions, with more cushions under your left arm or shoulder, and in such a way you were lying or semi-reclining in a position which was very similar to that of the rich and the powerful Greeks and Romans, whom Hazal had in mind. So, unless you who are listening to this video are one of those very, very few people, I am aware of such people, but very, very few in number. I doubt that their number is more than 30 or 40 all over the world. Unless you're one of those people who literally takes their dining room table out of the dining room and removes the chairs from the dining room and lays mattresses or cushions on the floor and lies down on them in such a manner as described during the Seder, then no matter what you think you're doing when you sit in your chair and lean over to the left in such a fashion, no matter what you think you're doing, you are not performing the mitzvah of hasebah, because to sit in such a manner is not hasebah. That is not the mitzvah of hasebah, for a number of reasons. First of all, it physically is not the same position. It is not the same type of reclining that Chazal had in mind. Second of all, this is not something which is considered important. It doesn't speak of being prestigious or particularly, it doesn't speak of a person being particularly powerful or wealthy or honorable, etc., as it did in those days. So even if you actually were to organize yourself in such a manner that you could recline, quite literally, as was done once, today that too would also not involve any kind of mitzvah, because today it doesn't mean anything. The important, the rich, the powerful today do not eat there at banquets in such a fashion. They sit on chairs at great big tables, maybe fancy chairs, very expensive chairs on very expensive tables, but they do not recline on any kind of a couch or cushions, etc. So even if one does so today, one is not achieving anything. And this was pointed out nearly 900 years ago by the Ra'van, one of the great Rishonim from Ashkenaz, from Germany. It was also later reiterated by the Ra'avya, also from Germany. It was quoted by the Mordechai in Siman Tauresh Yud Aleph. He quotes the Ra'van to this effect. And the Tur quotes the Ra'avya to this effect in Siman Tau Ayin Beth. And in another book of the Rishonim called Amarkel, this is quoted also in the name of Rabbeinu Baruch Mimagenza and Rabbeinu Hayim. So we have a whole school of thought amongst Ashkenazi Rishonim claiming that today there is no mitzvah of hasebah, because they understood that this practice, this social form, no longer exists. It is a throwback to a past which is long gone, and even if one were to do so, it would mean nothing, it would signify nothing. And therefore there is no mitzvah to do so, and there is no point in doing so. And usually most of us don't even have the furniture required to achieve this, and therefore, even if you wanted to, and therefore all these Rishonim, the Ra'avan, the Ra'avya, the Mordechai, etc., all these Rishonim state that it is not necessary, and even not just not necessary, but actually incorrect, to try and perform this mitzvah of hasebah. This is a classic case, therefore, where it is necessary to come to terms with the reality, to come to grips with the historical facts that this concept of hasebah is something that once existed and cannot be resuscitated, it cannot be revived in the present day, and even if one were to do so, it would be of no importance. And thus the halakha should be, and according to all these Rishonim, is that this act of hasebah is of no significance and should not be done. What one can and should do at the Seder table is to sit on as nice a chair as one has, and one can perhaps place some kind of cushion or pillow, or etc. on the chair in order to sit more comfortably, or to lean back in a manner which one is not used to doing every day of the year, not even on Shabbat, and thus make the Seder night in some way a little bit different, a little bit more special. That is possible. But to claim that the halakha requires us to pretend to enact or to reenact an ancient Greco-Roman Mediterranean reality, which no longer exists and which no longer has any meaning. To claim that the halakha is so anachronistic that it is lost in the technicalities of such a term without understanding the significance and the meaning of such an action is to turn halakha into something without meaning, without rationale, and without any consistent logic to it. And therefore, in my view, it is entirely superfluous and even self-defeating, and certainly no one is performing any miswah by trying to, by pretending to do this act of hasebah by sitting on a chair and leaning on one's left side, which today unfortunately only achieves one thing, and that is a backache.
Do all halachic authorities agree with the Rabbi's definition of the concept of hasebah, or reclining?
For anyone who doubts my definition and description of the concept of hasebah, the halachic concept of hasebah, or reclining at the Seder table, I recommend that one looks at the Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tav Ayin Beth, Sa'if Beth, where the Shulchan Aruch speaks about being mesev, reclining at the Seder table. And if you look at the Mishnah B'Drura, Siman Sa'if Katan Zayin, one will find that the Hafetz Chaim, Zichron Livracha, writes that, and he defines hasebah as lying on a bed, or he uses the word mita, which, as we explained, means some kind of a couch or sofa, or on a safsal, or a bench, he writes, with one's upper part or one's head propped up by cushions and pillows. This is the definition given by the Mishnah Brura on that seif in the Shulchan Aruch. In that same seif, I might add, the Rama adds that even a poor person who does not have pillows and cushions and the like, he should nevertheless recline on a safsal, on a bench. I would challenge anyone who disagrees with what I am saying to tell me when was the last time they saw someone at the Leila Seder on Pesach come to the table with a bench or a couch and lie down with or without cushions, propped up against the table with their head towards the table and the rest of their body pointing away from the table, as described by the Rama, as described by the Shulchan Aruch, by the Mishnah Brura. When was the last time someone saw that? In other words, there is in fact no discussion, there is no debate, there is no doubt that this is the only description and halachic definition of hasebah.
How would the rabbi respond to those who might say that your arguments are convincing, but that one is nevertheless required according to halakha to do hasebah?
My response would be to say that to do hasebah nowadays, for all the reasons we have explained in this interview, is in fact an affront to reason and rational thought. And even worse perhaps than that, that's bad enough, but even worse than that, it paints the halachic system by which we live, that is to say the core of Torah Judaism, it paints it as some kind of anachronistic and irrational system which insists on the acting out of different actions, even though they clearly do not achieve the very aims for which they were designed. In other words, we know why Hazal instituted the concept of hasebah at Leila Seder, in order, as Chazal themselves say, that every Jew should on this night behave like the rich, the powerful, and the high status people in society. And we all know that even if we were to actually act upon this as described by the Mishnah Brura himself, that we would not be achieving this aim. How much more so when we don't even do this, but we somehow convince ourselves that we are performing this halakha, we are acting out this halakha by sitting with our backs crooked in such a manner which in fact makes eating and drinking essentially impossible, certainly a very painful and abnormal experience. This all, in my view, is an assault upon halakha. True halakha never runs, never flies in the face of logic and reason, and this of course has nothing to do with understanding or not understanding some of the miswot in the Torah. If for example a person says, I'm not quite sure why I have to take a lulav on Sukkot, or if a person says, I don't know why it's necessary to not why it's wrong, it's impossible that a Jew should eat pork, for example. Well, there are many reasons that one can give or not give for these miswot, and perhaps we understand the miswah and perhaps we do not fully understand it. And some of the miswot are apparently designed to be beyond our comprehension, known as hukim, as discussed by all the mufarshim, by all Jewish authorities. But here we are discussing something which was instituted by the Hachamim for a specific reason, in order to achieve a certain goal, and we see plainly and we appreciate with our God-given faculty of reason that this is not the case, and in fact we are just making a laughingstock of ourselves, of the Torah and of halakha, and therefore to claim that the halakha requires us to make a laughingstock of halakha, to me, is a nonsensical argument.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.